High summer has arrived here on our little small farm, and with it comes lots of chores and lots of work. Not the least of which is just keeping everything watered so that it can keep growing. This includes all of our different gardens, both the vegetable garden and the flower garden, and it also includes our livestock. Our sheep are over at their summer pasture, which is just a little ways down the road, and so each day involves heading over to check on them, to change waters, and just to put our eyes on everything and see how everyone is growing. This is the time of year when we get the least amount of sleep. Because we're in northern United States, the days and daylight hours are very long, which means that we have ample time to spend outside doing the work of the season. We're not planting anymore. That work has already been done. The lambs are born, the tomatoes are growing, everything is where it should be. But now is the season for us to be preserving all of that.
This is a fun time of year because we get to finally start to harvest some things and put them up a bit. And this little herb garden is kind of special.
It is special, but it's certainly, when you think about putting things up, it's not restricted to what's in the herb garden, obviously. And that's what's so neat is when you walk around the property, even if you just walk around like wild parks and places around here, there's so much to preserve right now. There's already so many things that are coming out.
Yeah, and you don't want to be caught unprepared, right? When the time comes,
right.
You got to think ahead.
Yes. So we preserve in all kinds of different ways. It's a big part about how we spend our energy every summer. So much of what we grow here and what grows in our area, we put the effort into preserving so that we can eat on that through the autumn and through the winter because we think that's a really delicious and a wonderful way to kind of enjoy our food. So if you would like to learn more about preserving and about some of the methods that we use that you can apply in your own kitchen without any special equipment, we're going to be hosting our one and only preservation workshop at the end of the month, July 26th. So there's already quite a few spots in it filled, but there are some remaining. So we'll put some details about that below the video. But it's a really special workshop. I think we sold it out 3 times last year. And we've really worked to make it applicable. So you don't need to have a freeze dryer or a dehydrator or even a canning pot. So these are all recipes that you can apply just in your normal kitchen with some glass jars. And there's a lot you can do with even that. So I will put details about this workshop.
Yeah.
That's Pepper. I'll put details about the workshop right below this video. You can check it out, register. It just is on a first come, first served basis, and we have very limited seats available. And then we just ask that you register a week prior to the workshop because this is the really fun part is that we get to mail you a box of things for the workshop right to your doorstep. So this will include an Elliott Homestead apron, a signed cookbook, a workshop packet, a piece of our sourdough starter, and a few things to say thank you for joining us at the preservation workshop. So details on that below the video.
And if you're new here or if you've been around for a while and you haven't liked and subscribed to our channel, make sure you do that. It helps us out a lot and we appreciate it.
So I have a few preservation projects on the mind today. They just came through and picked all these beautiful cherries, but they left us a tree.
They're always very kind to leave us a few to glean. So now's the time to take advantage of doing that.
Yes. So we're going to glean some cherries today. And cherries are one of those crops that you have to love because every single one of them has a pit inside. So that's one of the preservation projects that probably takes the longest for us every year is just putting up our cherries, which we do in a few different ways.
And it's a bit messy.
And it's very messy. So we have some cherries to deal with. And then we also have some herbs that need to be harvested. So I've got some beautiful dill here and some parsley. I'll check my oregano. I've already cut that back once. I've got a little bit of lavender. This is one of those times where if you just open your eyes and you look to what's around you, there's fennel and mulberries and sage and all kinds of wonderful things. I don't think we really set out to build a food forest. But then before you know it, there's hazelnuts coming on the bushes and sunflower seeds and all these incredible little edible pieces.
Yeah.
of the landscape.
Sometimes those things get picked and eaten before you can actually harvest a bunch of them.
I've yet to see a strawberry this year.
Yeah, strawberries, raspberries.
Some of the things that we have planted in our gardens all around, they're all just mixed together. It doesn't serve a culinary purpose. It doesn't feed us through the winter time, but it does feed the pollinators now and into the winter, because some of these blossoms stay around. And that's probably my favorite part about anything we've done on our property so far, is the amount of pollinators that now come to visit us. I'm looking at this milkweed as I say this because we planted this just for the butterflies. It serves no other purpose other than feeding the pollinators. And it's interesting, after so many years of tending to the gardens, you learn their preferences. You learn what types of bees like different types of flowers, what the hummingbirds will go to first, or where you'll find the bumblebees, and you sort of start to speak their food language. And it's so neat to see, because they'll pop around maybe when the parsley's blooming. Then they do that, and then they'll do the bachelor buttons, and then they'll do the dill flowers. But they just bounce seasonally from flower to flower. And even through the winter time, we like to leave as much up as we can so that the pollinators have food for as long as possible. One of the first tricks about preserving that took me a little while to learn is that it's really important to know when to preserve. So, for example, see all these beautiful flowers behind me? That's all parsley that's now going to seed, and those seeds will spread and they will be next year's parsley. But if I want to preserve parsley by drying it, hanging it in my kitchen and using it throughout the autumn and winter, then I need to actually harvest it before it goes to seed, because these are the leaves that I actually want. This is parsley as we know it, like you would get it at the store, for example. But if I leave these, sometimes it could be for an extra day or two or an extra week or two, then they too will go to flower and go to seed, and then I won't have the leaves, I'll have the flower heads instead. And so it's really important in preserving to know when is that special moment that you want to capture it and you want to keep it just like that. Think about like when a fruit is the ripest. That's when you want to preserve it. If you do it too soon, you won't have the sugars that you need, it'll lack flavor. And if you do it too late, you compromise your goods because your produce is past prime, or it's gone to seed and you just don't have as much of it. So a lot of it comes down to just taking time, slowing down and taking time in your garden and seeing all the different pieces of it and knowing when to capture it and keep it in the kitchen. Can I borrow your knife? Is your perspective open? What is he barking at? We take off these top big clusters, then all these little side shoots will keep growing, which is great because we'll be able to harvest a lot from this. All right, let's gather up stew. I know we can get some sage and some lavender, a little bit of parsley, then maybe we can take them in and get them drying before we tackle the cherries. Okay. When I worked in the flower shop, we would always make bouquets of the silliest little things. And then we would say, will you marry me? Like, this is enough. This is beautiful, sufficient enough to be a wedding bouquet, in my opinion. I'll come out when the bees are done, get some more.
One of the first rules of advice that I give my preserving workshop participants is to only preserve what you will actually use. Preserving foods takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of intention. A lot of time is spent harvesting and putting up these wonderful things for the autumn and the winter. And while this is beautiful, and I would do it just because, we certainly don't want to waste effort. over time, you sort of begin to develop a language for the foods that your family will use and the things that you want to preserve from the summer season. For us, this means that I'm constantly preserving things like chicken stock and lamb stock and beef stock because this is a preserved food item that we use all the time. We also know which fruits we can get from our local farmers, which ones we can grow ourselves, and how we like them preserved. We didn't always know this, but over time we began to speak our preservation language of knowing the things that we wanted to see in the pantry and knowing the things that were worth our effort to preserve. Cherries do take a lot of work to preserve, but for our family, that work is worth it. And so we freeze dry them, we turn them into gelato for winter storage, we can them in a honey syrup, and if we can get our hands on pie cherries, we soak it in whiskey for pie cherry whiskey. There's lots of wonderful ways to preserve whatever fruits are local to you and vegetables too. And I would encourage you to develop your own preservation language, knowing the things that you want to see hanging on the walls, even if just for beauty's sake, knowing the types of foods that you want to see in the freezer and in the pantry and on your shelves, knowing which pieces of the summer are worth preserving to you and which pieces are best just to enjoy as is in the moment. There's no right or wrong answer here. There's just your language of preservation and ultimately how that's brought into your home. These are pieces of life that make our life beautiful, that enhance it and that make it better. Yours might look a little bit different than ours, and that's okay. Regardless of what you preserve this coming season, may your efforts be rich and blessed and delicious.